Women to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco, and it's so great to be here. We have a really wonderful show for you this week. Before we get started, I have a big announcement. We have a brand new sponsor of Women to Watch, and we're joining forces with Visit Philly, who's going to be bringing us wonderful updates and exciting news about the city of Philadelphia around events and hospitality. So I'm very, very excited to announce that new partnership. Joining me in just a moment will be Jenna Kurath. Jenna is Vice President of Startup Development, and she is also the head of, Comcast, NBC Universal SportsTech, also here in Philadelphia. So we're going to have a great conversation. And as always, stay with us during our breaks where you'll hear from our exclusive watch team of corporate partners, bringing you updates and news from their companies and their industries. If you'd like more information on the show and you want to see who's coming up next in our lineup, you can always visit womentowatch.net. That's watch.net, N-E-T. So now I'm very excited and honored to welcome to the show Jenna Kurath.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Hi, Jenna. It's great to have you. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an absolute honor. Our intro call, I felt like I could talk to you for hours, so I'm excited about this opportunity. And it's just a great time to kind of be introspective about life and the fun journey.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's all about the introspection, right? And kind of digging in and figuring out lessons about our life journey. So in reference to that, I wanted to start off to talk about your relationship with your grandmother growing up and why she was so important to you.
Yeah, my grandmother, she had 6 children, a very strong woman, never learned how to drive, but had the kindness of her heart that touched so many people. I think we shared a picture of me on our little porch sitting next to her. And I would just say that she taught me so many little things that, especially as I get older, I value that much more. This too shall pass, life and giving you more experiences and perspective. But for me, she represents kindness and what you can bring to the world. And so I always try to keep a little piece of that in my heart with her.
That's so nice. I think that's such a simple statement about this too shall pass. It's become very cliche, but it's so true.
It is true.
So true. Tell me about your family and upbringing and what kind of messaging you received as a young girl. I know you were an athlete, and we will talk about that because I think it's such a tremendous opportunity for girls, especially to play sports. But what was your household like? What was your upbringing like?
So for the first 5 years, I was in Florida. I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida, very close to my grandma, grandpa, lots of aunts and uncles. I was the first grandkid, so I got showered with all the love. And when we were 5, my mom and I actually moved to Colorado Springs. And it was a big shift and a big change. It was a brand new place. She moved for her career. She's incredibly smart, very talented, graduated first in her class. In organic chemistry of all things, was always an example to me of intellect and working hard. At the same time, she made it all the way up to a director level in military defense, which is even more remarkable as a woman, but also as a woman with a physical disability. So she has spinal muscular atrophy. Fortunately, she can still walk, but she's in a wheelchair a fair amount of the time. And so I think that did sort of change my upbringing to, I think I grew up pretty quickly as a kid, and I was an only child till I was 7. Shortly after we moved to Colorado, she met and married her second husband, my sister's dad. And so as much as I think of us as a unit of three, it was very much, a women-led household. And I had her as a role model of just hard work and ethics, but truly being somebody that valued education. Not only, undergrad, but MBA, went on to get her behavioral sciences degree. But again, I think for me I found so much that I learned from her in terms of that love of curiosity and reading and being in an intellectually challenging household that challenges you to think and have conviction behind your thoughts. But at the same time, I would say my life has probably been shaped mostly by being an athlete. That's really, truly what taught me about teamwork and grit and resiliency and so many of the life lessons that come with that. It shaped where I went to college, running for Baylor University. And so it's exciting to have it kind of come full circle for me and be at that intersection of sports and technology and the opportunity to work with and invest in founders to really push our products forward when it comes to sports experiences and fan engagement.
Your mom was so impressive. I mean, really, to have a physical disability to start, it makes everything else harder. And I wonder, did you have any fear around that? Or was she just such an example for you that you looked at it as, well, perhaps she might be different from the other moms. Look what she's accomplishing and doing.
Yeah, I think it was a big example of that, but it was also at the same time an example that at the end of the day, she probably couldn't relate to why I gravitated so much to athletics and sports. But for me, it truly was what defined me as a person. I loved that interplay between sort of physically challenging myself to see what I was capable of, but also that mental toughness. And I think my mom had that mental toughness as well. She maybe didn't have the physical piece and probably couldn't relate to why that was such a draw for me, but supported me all the same.
Yeah, I would say I think anyone who plays sports has a sense of adventure as well.
Yes.
And you took the opportunity to go to Germany as an exchange student. And so you were 15, I think, at the
I was
time.
15 years old. Yeah. So
that's young to just say, I'm going to go to another country. I mean, a lot of college students do that. But what were you hoping for in that journey?
Well, it probably speaks back to my competitive nature. I'm very achievement oriented in particular, but it was an opportunity where 4 children, or really children, because I was 15 at the time, were chosen. It was an opportunity to spend a year overseas. I knew exactly 1 year of German. So I knew how to, ask where the train station was and the restroom. And then if I answered, it was far too quick and I could not understand a word of what was being said. But it was truly such an eye-opening opportunity for me, and the trust that my mom had to let me go on that big adventure for an entire year in a foreign country. And, I think back, our daughter recently asked about summer camp and 2 weeks. And at the time, she would have been 9 at the time. I was like, oh my goodness, summer camp. But it was just a reminder of like, hey, if my mom could let me go to Germany and have this amazing experience and have the belief that I was strong enough to handle that, then yeah, summer camp and that independence, let's let her have that.
But especially it was, she's asking for it, right? He's initiating. You're not saying I'm sending you to camp. She wanted to do it.
Exactly. And I was incredibly fortunate. I was there when the wall came down. So it was an experience to see through the eyes of my host family. They were originally from East Germany, had actually spent time in prison. They were caught the first time escaping over the border. Wow. And to watch history unfold through their eyes, if you imagine, they left their family, their friends behind, and did not think that they would ever get an opportunity to see them again. So, suddenly the home was opened up. People that they hadn't connected and didn't think they'd ever see again filled that home. And it was amazing to watch that through that personal experience. It was also part of a scholarship program, so we did a presentation in Berlin. So I was there in February, a few months after the wall came down. One of the most visceral memories of all time. A group of us on that program, we were traveling all around the city and taking it in, and you could, whether the wall was there or not, you could see the difference. There was color on one side, there were signs. On the other side, there wasn't. And we actually talked some police officers into letting us stand on the wall and take a picture. So this is, way back in 1989. So of course, next day you drop that camera, the back opens up, it exposed the films. We're like, oh no, we'll go back, we'll try to recreate it. We might not be on the wall, but that section of the wall was gone. We were experiencing history.
Oh, it must have sent, when you came home, I would imagine you had a new sense of gratitude for the life we have here.
Absolutely. We are afforded opportunities here that I think we can often take for granted. I think the only experience that we've all gone through together was COVID that, left all of us unimpacted. Otherwise, a lot of times you're reading headlines of something tragic that's happening elsewhere, and it's hard to put yourself in those shoes and really experience what that must be like. And so that was probably my greatest appreciation for, it wasn't about memorizing dates and times for a test in history.
Right.
I experienced it.
Yes.
And it was visceral, and it was something I will never forget. I've often said I would not trade those experiences for anything, yet I would never do it again because it was what I faced during that time was quite a bit. My grandfather actually passed away when I was there. So it was the first significant family death that I had ever dealt with. And I was alone. I wasn't able to come back. And at the time, I would talk to my mom once a month and my sister once a month. And so it was something very difficult I had to go through on my own. But fortunately, I connected really closely with a friend. In the first month of it, you were in this language and family assimilation, and it was really to ingrain a little bit more on the language and the culture. And we used to write letters. We'd send books back and forth to each other. And I wrote her a letter, and she got on a train the next day and came down and let me just cry and tell her about my grandfather, who she'd never met.
Right. Wow. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about how therapeutic it was. We used to write letters.
Yes, I know.
It took a very long time to get a response, but I have letters that, my summers at the Jersey Shore, writing to my best friend who I miss so much, and waiting for those letters to come back. Yes. But it is a therapeutic thing to do.
It is a very therapeutic thing. We have a much more sort of, it's not something that we hold on to, but my daughter and I got this from my niece when I was visiting. She had written in dry erase board on the mirror instructions to her brother on how to put product in his hair so it wouldn't get too frizzy in the Florida humidity. And there was just something about that moment that I was like, it was just such a cute, sweet little message to her brother. And so when I got home from visiting, I did it for the first time and wrote a little message to our daughter. Oh. And it's just become a thing where I leave a little message for her on the mirror every night. And sometimes she responds to me. She writes little messages back. And yes, we erase. Yes. And so it's become kind of like our sweet little way of communicating with each other.
Yeah, better than a text.
Yes, far better.
More personal. So I want to talk about your athletics. And again, I'm always impressed, probably because I wasn't an athlete. I played CYO, volleyball, softball, but never did I consider myself an athlete. And I know it's a big part of your life. And my first question is, how do you think it affects the way you work today?
It's a great question. So sports shaped every aspect of how I approach life. I think it is because it's achievement based, because it's something that you have to set a very clear and distinct goal. This is what I'm going after. Developing a plan for how you're going to get there and executing it on it every day. It just taught me this resiliency. When the race doesn't go well, you pick yourself up and you learn from that and you step back on the line and you see what you're made of. And I love the rigor of that. And I love the mental aspect of it too, that it is How do you show up in those moments, not just, prepared and ready because you put the work in, but because you're mentally ready to be there, to see what you're made of, but to contribute to your team. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, my very first race, I would say my first love was ballet. I did that for years and years. But I ran my first race when I was 8 years old. And so that same picture with my grandmother is the picture just before we left for the race. And if you're looking at it, I'm rocking some knee-high socks. It's pretty exciting.
Socks.
But I was determined to win that race because the first place boy and girl got their picture in the newspaper. And I thought that was the coolest thing. So I lined up in the front, and it was on this kind of wide gravel road, and the gun went off and I went down. And I went down. Oh, I got completely trampled. I had bloody knees. My grandma was there. I remember this amazingly strong man like reaching in and pulling me out because I was literally getting run over. And so I never finished the race.
Okay, what was that lesson? Do you think you were maybe too confident, overly confident, or what do you think the lesson was there for that to have happened?
Yeah, I think I was not prepared.
Not prepared.
For sure. I didn't belong in the front. But
not yet.
But I think what I love about that story is, I got knocked down, but I got back up and I came back the next year and I did win that fun run.
Oh, awesome.
So it's one of those things where, again, I think sports is just this beautiful metaphor for life. I think it brings people together. There's a shared passion, commitment, grit, resiliency. It's what we look to, and we are so inspired by Team USA athletes, and to whether you're a weekend warrior or you ran in college and it's still something that you love. It's shaped every aspect. I also, you asked about Germany, and so because I was there my junior year, I didn't post any times. And then my senior year, when I came back, I got really sick and I was hospitalized right before state. And so I did not have any scores, any points up on the board to show what I was capable of. My high school track coach always spoke very, very highly of Coach Hart at Baylor University, and I was a little bit obsessed about running for him. He trained Michael Johnson, Jeremy Warner, all throughout their careers as gold medalists, and his character and ethics as a coach really drew me to the school. So chose Baylor, international business and marketing, minored in German. Thought I was going to be a foreign diplomat after experiencing the Berlin Wall come down. And I had to walk onto that team. I didn't have numbers to post. Wow. And I remember I had to earn my place there. And it was one of the more impactful times of my life it was like suddenly having hundreds of brothers and sisters, and the hard work and resiliency and the time management. And I ran cross country, indoor and outdoor tracks. So we raced pretty much every weekend with the exception of one. And so I truly did have to learn to manage my time to make sure that I continued to get the top grades that I could. And that every time I stepped on the line that I was prepared to stay upright throughout the race and finish and score for the team.
Yeah. You know what? We have to go into our first break. When we come back, I'm going to start with a quote that kind of speaks to what you're describing. Stay with us. I'll be back with Jenna Kurath. Our watch team's coming up next.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch action news live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm speaking with Jenna Kurath this week. Jenna is Vice President of Startup Development, and she also leads Comcast NBC Universal's SportsTech, which we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes. In light of what you were talking about before we went into break, I wanted to start this segment with a quote. You said, "I don't see myself as a risk taker." Excuse me. I think of myself as very measured. I try to blend vision and practicality. And I think, first of all, I think that speaks to your self-awareness, right? So you've done that introspection for sure. And I wonder how, especially in the field you're in where things are happening and changing so very quickly. How do you balance that, the vision, the innovation, the excitement for moving things forward and discovering, but also being practical at the same time?
Yeah, I think it goes back to being really clear about the why. And that's really articulating the goals. What's the vision and what are you marching towards? And then coming up with a very pragmatic plan to get there and execute it every day. What's interesting about our Comcast NBCU SportsTech program is it's essentially my dream job that I got to architect out of nothing. It was a little idea, had no funding, put together a business plan, really stood back and looked at why is sports so important to our business? We've made incredible investments in media rights. We have the opportunity to tell the stories of our Team USA athletes through 2032. WWE chose Peacock to be their streaming home. You don't have a 24/7 golf channel without a really deep relationship with PGA Tour. And so I stepped back and looked at how do we build off of those media rights and those sponsorship investments? How do we continue to push our sports products and fan experiences much further along? And we do have a history of this at Comcast of really investing in startups. It helps to keep that entrepreneurial mindset alive within the company. Ralph Roberts began the company. Brian Roberts leads it today. And he was the true entrepreneur at his heart and his core. But when you get to a company of our size and scale, it's a little hard to shift. Yet the world, to your point, the dynamics of it are changing constantly. And so by investing in startups, working alongside with them, we have an opportunity to test and pilot that technology and really bring about more innovative discovery, so that we're not just making incremental changes to the experience, but we're really pushing ourselves beyond the status quo. And so I get to live at this intersection of sports and technology and work with these entrepreneurial founders. You get definitely a contact high off of their entrepreneurial spirit, and just to be a part of that journey of really challenging assumptions to build a sustainable business. We invest in those companies. Truly, the North Star is we have an opportunity to pilot that technology, license it, integrate it into the business, acquire it, that early lens of shaping what that looks like. So we're at the forefront of owning the future of sports versus trying to catch up, if you will. And I always say that at the end of the day, these founders have an opportunity not just to work with NBC Sports and Sky Sports, and we own the Flyers and Wells Fargo Center, but we brought in PGA Tour, WWE, NASCAR, and 3 Olympic teams to, again, build off of those media rights and sponsorship investments. So as a founder, you get an opportunity to test and pilot your technology across different teams, leagues, organizations. That de-risks that initial investment because you're not locked into a single sport, but you're really challenging assumptions and building a sustainable business and finding product market fit by working with these decision makers. And if it's relevant and significant enough to our business, solving a problem we're solving and we're willing to pay for it, that is revenue going back into that organization, that startup. It de-risks that initial investment, and it brings fans closer to the sports, the athletes that they love.
Yeah. You're finding and funding and supporting entrepreneurs and startups globally. And I was curious if you've noticed anything culturally that is different between entrepreneurs, in Europe, or entrepreneurs from the Middle East, or as opposed to entrepreneurs here in the US. Was there anything striking?
Oh, it's a very interesting question. Say some of the really successful teams have come out of Toronto, and you read all about this all the time, that it is very much a tech hub. A lot of big, large tech organizations have satellite offices there, have invested in companies there. So we've seen incredible talent come out of the Toronto area in particular. But I think what's interesting, you look at our current cohort, 50% of them are international companies, and a lot of them are they've had tremendous success in their country, but they're looking to make it within the United States. And it is a very difficult ecosystem to break into. And it's just this reminder that while sports and love of sports can blur boundaries and bring people together, there are still fundamentally different business challenges on both sides of the pond, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it's really ingrained in our program to challenge your beliefs on things, to really test and experiment and learn from that so that you can deeply understand what your customer needs and wants. That's how you find sustainable product market fit. And so when we're deciding the 10 companies to bring on board, it's really our sports partners that are with us in that process, scoring and interviewing and asking all those challenging questions. But at the end of the day, we are investing first and foremost in those founders, a belief that it's a problem we're solving, and that's the team to do it. And we look for coachability. Mm-hmm. We look for all of those aspects that Coach Hart looked for. He would always say, he would recruit for good citizens first, great athletes second, because when you're building a team, it's the character of people, it is the shared values, a real strong anchoring in the why that really drives something that is mission-driven and sustainable.
Yeah. I would imagine some of our viewers, they know what technology represents, they know what sports is, but when they hear the phrase sports tech, they might not know what that even means. So, talk about that. And if there's anything up and coming or that you're excited about, that's perhaps a new product coming out in the field.
Yes, absolutely. So you're right. When you talk about sports tech, just wrapping your arms around it, it's a much more massive investment category than one would expect. We actually have 8 strategic investment areas. So that's everything from media and entertainment. And that is really how do we help improve the efficiency of production, of storytelling, so that we can personalize content. We can bring things that are more relevant across all these different digital platforms that we have, or remote technology, remote production, which became critical during COVID when even sports went on pause and we had to figure out a way to still bring us the games that we loved. And so that's a huge category for us. Venue and event innovation is another big category. If you look at the Comcast business side, we provide connectivity and advanced networking in 144 stadiums in the United States. They are definitely some of the most challenging places because you have such a concentration of fans that come together and are using their technology and wanting to experience and get as close to the athletes as possible. And so if you can solve something at the scale of a stadium or a NASCAR racetrack that can hold 17 football fields in the infield, you have something that is of value. Fantasy and sports betting, you're seeing so much more of that, of micro betting and giving fans different reasons for tuning in and a different appreciation for the nuances of each sport. Athlete and player performance is another huge category, obviously with 3 Olympic teams of USA swimming, ski and snowboard, and cycling. Giving those Team USA athletes every bit of technology to help them on their path to the podium is critical. Those are the stories that, every 2 years we love for those 17 days to be inspired by what they can accomplish. And the technology stories behind that just add to that tapestry of storytelling that we're so proud of as a company. But it's, business of sports, it's esports. So there's a lot of different categories there. And at the end of the day, I love those opportunities where you can bring as much innovation in the living room experience as you can in a stadium. And so that's different camera angles, or it's the ability to listen to the commentary for broadcasting while you're there in the venue so that you have the best of both worlds. We have companies in this cohort that are tech for good and are bringing people together, cohorts of people that, are bringing fans in and supporting different causes. So we look for things that really are impactful to the business and can unlock new revenue, deliver on cost savings, operational efficiencies. Those are really the key markers. So any of the 10 companies that we choose coming through, it's because we have line of sight of how we're going to test and pilot it. Multiple sports partners are engaged, they're leaning in, they want to learn, they want to innovate alongside these founders. And they have an opportunity to build something that, millions of people get to experience just through their love of sports.
Yeah. It's so interesting. In preparing for this interview, I came across an article, and you might already be familiar with it. Two gentlemen, I think, developed an app that allows you to order your food in advance of an event so that you don't leave and stand in a concession line for 40 minutes and miss a home run.
Yes. In fact, that was the inspiration. Yes, Aaron missed the big moment. And it was really about how do we make that experience in the stadium so unforgettable that you have to be there, that you are in your seat loving and experiencing every moment.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting example of a company that we had been nurturing that relationship since 2020 when we announced the SportsTech program. And it was really, when sports went on pause and we were slowly getting fans back in the stadiums, it was a challenge for us to answer the question, could we really test and pilot this technology? There were so many unknowns within bringing fans back. And this year, and their advancement in terms of what they're already doing for the New York Mets, they have integrations in with Uber Eats already. So they're sort of behind the scenes delivering on mobile ordering and in-seat delivery already. You just don't necessarily know the rivalry check name. And so that's been a really exciting one to see. Well, how do we change that in other areas? Like, how do you make that a much more immersive fan experience when you're, at a tournament, a golf tournament? How do we make that a better, more seamless experience? It's obviously relevant for Wells Fargo and our Flyers. So, and this is a team that's also really making strides in other verticals. And so you'll see this a lot where you get your entrenchment in sports, but there are other relevant fields that we see a lot of crossover in. Military is one of them, but they in particular are really getting entrenched within the hospitality space. And again, hospitality, hospital systems, these are all—
I was just going to say healthcare, I bet.
Healthcare, exactly.
Of all places. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
We only have a few minutes. I want to talk more about you. And you're a mother. You mentioned your daughter. And in this crazy world of technology that we live in, AI's here. It's coming.
Yes.
It's. Tell me what do you worry about most for her growing up, her generation, what they will have to kind of be navigating?
Yeah, I think I look a lot at my niece and nephew, and I shared with, Kayla writing the sweet note to her brother, but they grew up in that generation of social media before we really knew sort of what the pluses and minuses of that can be. And you've seen a lot of the data about, for girls in particular, that it is really hard on their self-esteem, body image. So I worry about that. I think growing up, if if something disappointing happened at school, it kind of stayed on the playground. There wasn't this necessarily a digital trail. And, I worry about— she's wired a little bit like me to be a perfectionist. And that can be something that you can keep revisiting. And it can be harmful if it's not managed in a good way. So I constantly say to her, like, you want to be a great cyber citizen the same way that you are a great friend. Be careful what you say; it lives out there forever. And treat others with kindness and the love that they deserve and that you yourself deserve. And so I think technology can be a beautiful thing. It can be a uniting thing. But we constantly have to see how society embraces technology. And in today's day and age in particular, learn the fundamentals around understanding your source. Where are you getting your information from? Be open-minded, be a voracious reader, take in a lot of different viewpoints. I think having curiosity will always keep your mind open to listening and understanding different people's perspectives. And people have a voice now and a way to put that out there. And I think if it can be a very beautiful and uniting thing if used in the right way.
Yeah, that's great advice. And lastly, your perfectionism, are you working on that? Are you trying to give yourself more grace and not, put so much pressure on yourself?
Yes, definitely trying to give myself more grace there. I think that's the beauty as a parent. You get a constant reminder to embrace the advice you yourself give. And she can be hard on herself the same way that I am. And having those moments of, would you ever say something like that to your friend Rory? And her response, I would never speak to her that way. Like, then speak to yourself with that same kindness. And, I think it helps as you get older, you have a lot more life experiences to draw on. This too shall pass, as my grandmother said. And I shared at the beginning that you have that perspective. And, I think at the end of the day, look, as far as we know, we only get one go around. You might as well, get on the line, give it all that you can. As Brené Brown says, get in the arena and see what you're made of, and make a lasting mark on the world. And if our daughter can do that in her own way, as the kind, loving, thoughtful girl that she is, and remain curious, I think those are the people that contribute and add value every day and make our world a better place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think she will. I'm sure she will. Jenna, thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to share your story and be with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sue. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Stay with us now for our watch team, and we will be right back.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
If you think severe weather has been on the rise, you are correct. In the last 3 years, tornado warnings in our region have shattered records, with 52 last year alone. Half of those warnings resulted in confirmed tornadoes, including 2 extremely rare EF3s. Thanks for always trusting us to keep you informed.
50 Years of AccuWeather is sponsored by Independence Blue Cross. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
From Philadelphia to the Lehigh Valley and everywhere in between. For 150 years, Penn Community Bank has been a part of your neighborhood. Helping businesses start, supporting families as they grow, and staying connected to the people and places that make this region special. It's who we are and where we're from. Penn Community Bank. Here we are, and here we grow.
There's a moment every hour, every day, every week. These moments shape our world. They add color, perspective, and sometimes pain. Moments are meant to be shared by friends, family, people you trust. At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hello, welcome to the lifestyle segment of Women to Watch. I'm Sherry Morrison. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Victoria Wilson, Operations Director of Sharing Access. Welcome to the show, Victoria.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. So Victoria is local to the Philadelphia and the surrounding area. Victoria, please tell us a little bit about where you're from and your education.
Yeah, so I am originally from Westchester. So I've been in the Philly area my whole life. I went to Drexel University, and there I studied entertainment and arts management.
Ah. And then after you studied arts and entertainment at Drexel, you headed to New York City?
Yeah, shortly after graduation, I got a job as a receptionist in New York City. I was there for not even a year until COVID hit, and then I kind of bounced on back here to Philly.
Okay. So this was COVID time when you came back to Philly.
Yes.
You came home to shelter. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what happened once you got home?
Yeah, so I came back to Philly because of COVID. New York was not the best place to be. And I was with my friend Evan at the time, and we were together when all of the food businesses in the area started to shut down and close their doors, and they weren't able to serve any food that they had prepped. And so they started calling Evan, who had started the organization Sharing Access, and him and I kind of hopped in a van and we went around from food business to food business, literally rescuing food for the next 48 hours and delivering all of that to local food banks.
Very cool. So that kind of started just before the holidays in 2018. Evan was still attending Drexel and you were up in New York, and he had a somewhat of a life-changing day. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that experience that led to Sharing Access?
Yeah, for sure. So when Evan was a student at Drexel, one semester was about to end, and he realized that he had 50 meal swipes left in his dining account that were going to go unused. They weren't going to roll over to the next term, so he figured he'd swipe all of them out. He put all of the meals in his car and went to Center City and gave it out to literally anybody who needed a meal. He likes to say that that was the day that changed his life forever. And he started to realize, if I have this much personal access in my life, how much personal access does everybody else around me have? And why aren't we doing anything about it?
Yeah. So he started after that, realizing the other kids had the same issue and unused meal plans. He started a combined account. How was that handled? Like what happened with the food and the meal plans?
Yeah, that was kind of the day that the concept of sharing access was born. So he brought that as a formal business plan to Drexel University and said, hey, how can we get other students to donate meal swipes as well? I'm sure others have ones that aren't going used. And so they created this collective account where people and students could donate their meal swipes, and those meal swipes would be reallocated to students who may need a meal.
Oh, that's great. So it was going to other kids on the campus who couldn't afford meal plans necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. And then more started to take off with friends who worked at grocery stores and restaurants. You call it the Retail Rescue Program. Please explain what happens with the food from this program.
Definitely. So word kind of got around about what Evan was doing, and local food businesses where he had friends who were cashiers started calling and saying, hey, we have banana boxes full of food and it's either going to be thrown out, but I figured I'd give you a call, see if you can do anything with it. So he would, again, hop in his car and go and pick up this food and literally would Google the nearest hunger relief organization or shelter and drop that food off there. And that became somewhat of a regular occurrence. And the closer he got with these food businesses, the more he realized how much waste or food surplus they really were experiencing. So decided to turn that into a formal retail rescue program and pick up from these food businesses on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And then at this point, he needed help with pickups and deliveries and vehicles. So who did he contact did he buy trucks or what happened?
Yeah, it kind of started with actually asking a local food bank to lend us a van for a little bit until we were able to get our own. But it was a network of students who were helping out at first, and also just individuals that were volunteering with their personal vehicles. So once we got enough to fundraise for our own vehicle, that was a big day. But we were able to send a van that would go around to 10 or 12 grocery stores in one day and pick up all of that food and deliver it to a network of hunger relief organizations throughout the city.
That's fantastic. I know I had a food manufacturing company for 24 years and mostly fresh soups that I would manufacture. And every once in a while, it was very close to me in operations and tracking everything. So I didn't have a lot of waste and things to get rid of. But every once in a while, a batch of something wouldn't sell like we expected it to, or somebody would cancel an order. And I would have some excess that I would like to get rid of. And I would call the food bank, but they weren't interested in the larger quantities. Like they wanted me to break it down into pints and quarts to distribute, which was very labor intensive for me. Plus I didn't have supplies of that size container. I was packaging in 1.5 gallon, like cryovac type bags. So there was a real need for, not to mention if there were any leftover vegetables that, for some reason didn't get used up. So it would have been a great service to have back then. And I know a lot of manufacturers, especially out in that area, could still use some help with getting rid of some of their excess food, because not being in the city, it's just not accessible to a lot of food banks and distributors.
Definitely. And an interesting thing is, food banks are really, really good at distributing food and knowing where the need is in their community. It's not always up to them to be the ones that are rescuing the food. So that's kind of where we come in. We're really filling that gap and trying to be as helpful as possible to these food businesses for taking all of their food, packaging it if we need to, and then redistributing that and actually giving it to the food bank so that they can really spend time on doing what they know best, which is distributing that food and getting it out to people who need it.
Yeah, what a wonderful service you're providing. So you're 2 years into this now, 3 years?
Yeah, I'm 3 years into this now.
Yeah, so how often is someone going out and picking up and delivering food?
Every single day. We have a team of drivers who are in, box trucks, vans. We even have volunteers in personal vehicles. And we are picking up from all of the major grocers in the Philadelphia area. And then we also have some grocers down in Baltimore and in the DC area. So every day, in the morning, they go to these stores, they pick up the food, and then they deliver it to a network of hunger relief organizations.
Great. And you've been tracking the numbers since 2020. And because the numbers are staggering, please listen as I read some of these off. First, approximately 40% of our food supply is tossed and considered waste. That's huge. To date, Sharing Excess has rescued 14,600,000 pounds of food from grocers, restaurants, wholesalers, and farmers, and delivered it to over 180 nonprofits and food banks. That's a retail value of about $27 million and 54 million pounds of CO2 diverted from landfills. If this was done all around Philadelphia and the surrounding area, do you think there would still be a need of people going hungry?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there's always going to be some level of hunger, you could say. Even in the morning, if I don't have anything for breakfast, I could be considered hungry at that point. But there is definitely more than enough food to go around. The issue is access to food. So, taking that food that is surplus from point A and bringing it to point B where it's needed. We're actually wasting more than double the amount of food that we would need to theoretically end food insecurity. So what we're really trying to address at Sharing Excess is that point of access, and how do we increase those access points all throughout the city and really give people an opportunity to get this food.
Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of help from the colleges in the area. Is there someone you would like to reach out to who you think would be most impactful and helpful to the city of Philadelphia?
Yeah, honestly, like reaching any food businesses or any like financial supporters that are able to allow us to expand and grow throughout the area is always huge. But also students are really big. So we started on a college campus. We are still working with a lot of students. We have chapters at about 20 universities all throughout the United States. So students are really, really passionate and driven and able to kind of mobilize themselves to do this work. So yeah, always looking for passionate students.
Yeah, and corporate social responsibility is so huge now. It's such a buzzword, and CSR is such an acronym that you see everywhere. It's great for kids to get a taste of this now. So what's next? Is there anyone or any group our listeners can reach out to who may be helpful with your mission or growth, or where are you headed?
We are headed wherever the wind may take us. And I say that because we really follow the food sources. So when any major food donor, or even just, larger or smaller, has food that they want to donate, we're able to get there. So wherever that may bring us, this year we are looking to expand up in New York and throughout different states where there are large produce terminals, and also just a lot of aggregated food businesses in one area. So that is kind of what 2023 is going to look like for us. A lot of expanding throughout the United States.
I think you were headed to DC when we were chatting on the phone.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope you were successful.
We were. We just started working with a few Trader Joe's stores down there. So just getting the ball rolling. They are a fantastic company that donates hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds of food every year. So just, testing out the water of the operations down there, and everything went smoothly, very, very smoothly.
Great. Well, this is a very big and aggressive mission that you have. Best of luck, and thank you for all you do and for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Our pleasure. So for more information about Victoria, Sharing Excess, and making donations, food and monetary, organizing a pickup or delivery or volunteering, go to www.sharingexcess.com. Sue will be right back to close out the show. Ladies, keep living.
Hi, this is Sue Rocco. Women to Watch is pleased to share a clip from Breaking Through, a podcast hosted by Madeline Bell, the president and CEO of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. This interview is part of a series in which Madeline interviews CHOP's women scientists about what inspires them and advice they have for other women interested in pursuing science and medicine careers.
My guest today is Dr. Diva De Leon.
Dr. DeLeon is chief of the Division of Endocrinology and Diabetes at CHOP. She is also co-director of a frontier program that is focused on developing new treatments for a rare disease called congenital hyperinsulinism. Did you have any role models or mentors along the way once you chose your path as a physician?
Particularly, I can remember a pediatric resident. So this resident gave me opportunities to develop some new skills as a medical student that some of my peers did not have the opportunity to develop. And I think that was important for me to see the path in front of me and to make me feel confident in my decision of becoming a pediatrician.
Let's get back to a little bit about your work and your research. Can you tell our listeners what is congenital hyperinsulinism?
It's basically the opposite to diabetes. So in diabetes, your blood sugar is high because you do not produce enough insulin. In hyperinsulinism, your blood sugar is low because you produce too much insulin.
What would happen to a child in the future if their hyperinsulinism was not treated?
Failure of brain function that in the short term can manifest with a seizure and even death.
To hear more of Madeline's interviews with CHOP's amazing doctors and scientists, listen to Breaking Through with Madeline Bell, available wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back. That is it for Women to Watch this week. Thank you, as always, to Kateri and all of our sponsors for helping us to bring you the show each week. Next week, I'm going to be talking to Carolyn Carluccio Tornetta. I love that name. Carolyn is running for Supreme Court Judge of Pennsylvania. Have a great week, everyone.
Now, the Women to Watch, Military Watch.
Hi, I'm Carol Eggert, Senior Vice President of Military Affairs at Comcast, NBC Universal. You know, seriously, last year, the U.S. Army fell short of its recruitment goal by 15,000 soldiers. The other branches of our nation's military are experiencing similar challenges. Now, how can the military position itself as an attractive experience for current and future generations? As military leaders address these issues on the front end, there are ways civilians can support those efforts on the back end. Less than 20% of those who serve make the military a lifelong career. The vast majority wish to take the skills they've learned, the talents they've refined, and the education they received into the civilian workforce. That's why it's important for employers to continue their efforts in recruiting and retaining military community talent. For those who choose to leave the military, knowing their military experiences are understood, valued, and sought after by employers could influence whether these highly talented and dedicated people choose to serve our nation. And our nation has made incredible strides in understanding the skills, experiences, and spirit people with military experience bring to our workplaces. None more so than in the last 15 to 20 years, as our nation's military was in the forefront of people's minds throughout the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. At Comcast NBC Universal, our military hiring goal has forever changed our company's workplace culture for the better. It will remain a significant part of our organization's commitment to serving the military community. If you're motivated to recruit and retain military talent, Psych Armor has a series of free online courses for employers. Just go to psycharmor.org to learn more.
It's the #1 news at 10 p.m. Action News on PHL 17. Join Shari Williams, Gray Hall, Deuces Rogers, and meteorologist Adam Joseph for all the big stories at a time that's right for you. Action News at 10 p.m. on PHL 17.